Welcome, and welcome back to Thank God for Grace and Mercy. My name is Tony, and this is Reading the Bible in a Year. Today is day 269, and we're going to start in the book of Nehemiah today, and we're going to read chapters 1 through 5. Yesterday was day 268. We finished up the book of Ezra. Here's my 2 cents from the end of the reading from yesterday, at least the things that Tony took away, right? Ezra's so excited. You know, he's a young Bible scholar who's getting to go back to Jerusalem and be preaching on the Bible, rebuilding this temple. He's got the blessing of the king. God is with him, and it gives him courage, right? It also probably gives him a little overexcitement, you know. He goes off and forgets he needs Levites, you know, which was important in those times. Those were the priests that took care of the temple. Other things he does is he just doesn't. We see a couple examples of this, and this is where my takeaway comes from. He does things on his own without consulting God first, and then later comes back to God at least once, and then the second time the book ends. So in the first time, you know, the king is offering all these provisions and everything to build the temple back. They're going to be carrying all this money, basically, and silver and gold and temple vessels and valuable things back. And the king even offers, hey, you know, it's going to be a long trek. Do you need bodyguards or, you know, some security? I can send that with you. And Ezra's like, no, God's got me. We're good. Well, he hadn't even prayed about that yet, you know. Maybe that's how God was going to get him. Hey, here's a whole detail of security guards and guards from the king to make sure you get there safe. So Ezra does realize this, though, and he prays and he fasts, and the Lord does protect them. They make it back home safe with all their vessels and gold and implements and whatnot. But then the next thing that comes up is, you know, Ezra realizes that the people have sinned, you know, that they've done exactly what God had told them not to do, which was to marry the foreign women in that area and to have children with them, you know, because they're not followers of Yahweh, you know. And typically what has always happened is if you marry all these foreign women who have all these foreign gods, you end up getting led astray, and you end up putting some of those pagan practices in their life, or they end up worshiping these foreign gods too. And so God told them not to do it. Well, here's Ezra's, at least in Tony's 2 cents, is Ezra's other mistake is he doesn't ask God what to do or for God's direction. He's just like, God said don't marry him, so divorce them. Gets everyone together and it's like, you got to divorce your wives, you got to separate from these people, whatnot. And God had never commanded him to do that. So my 2 cents is just that we can learn, at least from Ezra, at least that I learned from Ezra, is it's a great thing to follow God. But sometimes it can be difficult, and we should always be searching for his will and not our own, not asking God to bless our will, but to ask God what his will is, and then listen and try to follow it the best you can. It's way easier said than done. I mean, it's something I've personally been trying to do for a while, and it's tough, you know, but doesn't mean I'm going to stop trying to ask God, what's your will in my life, and help me follow that. So that's my 2 cents from yesterday. So without any further ado, let's say a short prayer and we'll get right into the reading for today. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for your love, for your grace, for your mercy. Thank you for chasing after us, Lord. Lord, you have a will for all of us, a direction you'd like us to follow. And oftentimes we just don't do it. We don't even ask you about it, Lord. So Lord, please help us ask you about your will in our life. And then please show us what that will is. Make it easy to understand. Don't make it complicated or convoluted. Make it simple and clear what your will is for us in our lives. And give us the power and the strength to be able to do that, Lord. Lord, please help us get closer to you today through reading the Bible. Please give us eyes to be able to see the message, ears that will hear it, and hearts that can receive it with gladness. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So this is Nehemiah. I'll read 1 through 5. Nehemiah 1. The Memoirs of Nehemiah, son of Hakaliah. It was the month of Kislev in the 20th year. At the time, I was in the palace complex at Susa. Hanani, one of my brothers, had just arrived from Judah with some fellow Jews. I asked them about the conditions among the Jews there who had survived the exile and about Jerusalem. They told me, "The exile survivors who are left there in the province are in bad shape. Conditions are appalling. The wall of Jerusalem is still rubble. The city gates are still cinders." When I heard this, I sat down and wept. I mourned for days, fasting and praying before the God of heaven. I said, God of heaven, the great and awesome God, loyal to his covenant and faithful to those who love him and obey his commands, look at me, listen to me. Pay attention to this prayer of your servant that I'm praying day and night in intercession for your servants, the people of Israel, confessing the sins of the people of Israel. And I'm including myself, I and my ancestors, among those who have sinned against you. We've treated you like dirt. We haven't done what you've told us, haven't followed your commands, and haven't respected the decisions you gave to Moses, your servant. All the same, remember the warning you posted to your servant Moses. If you betray me, I'll scatter you to the four winds. But if you come back to me and do what I tell you, I'll gather up all these scattered peoples from wherever they ended up and put them back in the place I chose to mark with my name. Well, there they are, your servants, your people, whom you so powerfully and impressively redeemed. O Master, listen to me. Listen to your servant's prayer, and yes, to all your servants who delight in honoring you, and make me successful today so that I can get what I want from the king. I was cupbearer to the king. Nehemiah 2. It was the month of Nisan in the 20th year of Artaxerxes, the king. At the hour for serving wine, I brought it in and gave it to the king. I had never been hangdog in his presence before, so he asked me, "Why the long face? You're not sick, are you? Or are you depressed?" That made me all the more agitated. I said, "Long live the king, and why shouldn't I be depressed when the city where all my family is buried is in ruins, and the city gates have been reduced to cinders?" Then the king asked me, "So what do you want?" Praying under my breath to the God of heaven, I said, "If it please the king, and if the king thinks well of me, send me to Judah, to the city where my family is buried, so that I can rebuild it." The king, with the queen sitting alongside him, said, "How long will your work take, and when would you expect to return?" I gave him a time, and the king gave his approval to send me. Then I said, "If it please the king, provide me with letters to the governors across the Euphrates that authorize my travel through to Judah, and also an order to Asaph, keeper of the king's forest, to supply me with timber for the beams of the temple fortress, the wall of the city, and the house where I'll be living." The generous hand of my God was with me in this, and the king gave them to me. When I met the governors across the river, the Euphrates, I showed them the king's letters. The king even sent along a cavalry escort. When Sanballat, the Horonite, and Tobiah, the Ammonite official, heard about this, they were very upset, angry that anyone would come to look after the interests of the people of Israel. "Come, let's build the wall of Jerusalem." And so I arrived in Jerusalem. After I had been there 3 days, I got up in the middle of the night, I and a few men who were with me. I hadn't told anyone what my God had put in my heart to do for Jerusalem. The only animal with us was the one I was riding. Under cover of night, I went past the valley gate, toward the dragon's fountain, to the dung gate, looking over the walls of Jerusalem, which had been broken through and whose gates had been burned up. I then crossed to the fountain gate and headed for the king's pool, but there wasn't enough room for the donkey I was riding to get through. So I went up the valley in the dark, continuing my inspection of the wall. I came back in through the valley gate. The local officials had no idea where I'd gone or what I was doing. I hadn't breathed a word to the Jews, priests, nobles, local officials, or anyone else who would be working on the job. Then I gave them my report. Face it, we're in a bad way here. Jerusalem is a wreck. Its gates are burned up. Come, let's build the wall of Jerusalem and not live with this disgrace any longer. I told them how God was supporting me and how the king was backing me up. They said, we're with you. Let's get started. They rolled up their sleeves, ready for the good work. When Sanballat the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite official, and Geshem the Arab heard about it, they laughed at us, mocking, "Ha! What do you think you're doing? Do you think you can cross the king?" I shot back, "The God of heaven will make sure we succeed. We're his servants, and we're going to work, rebuilding. You can stick to your own business. You get no say in this. Jerusalem's none of your business." Nehemiah 3. The high priest Eliashib and his fellow priests were up and at it. They went to work on the sheep gate. They repaired it and hung its doors, continuing on as far as the Tower of the 100 and the Tower of Hananel. The men of Jericho worked alongside them, and next to them, Zachar, son of Imri. The fish gate was built by the Hassanah brothers. They repaired it, hung its doors, and installed its bolts and bars. Meremoth, son of Uriah, the son of Hakaz, worked. Next to him, Meshullam, son of Berechiah, the son of Mezrabel. Next to him, Zadok, son of Bana, and next to the Tekoites, except for their nobles, who wouldn't work with their master and refused to get their hands dirty with such work. The Jeshanan gate was rebuilt by Joada, son of Paseah, and Meshullam, son of Besodeiah. They repaired it, hung its doors, and installed its bolts and bars. Melatiah the Gibeonite, Jadon the Meronothite, and the men of Gibeon and Mizpath, which was under the rule of the governor from across the Euphrates, worked alongside them. Uzziel, son of Harhaiah, of the goldsmiths guild, worked next to him, and next to him Hananiah, one of the perfumers. They rebuilt the wall of Jerusalem as far as the broad wall. The next section was worked on by Rephaiah, son of Hur, mayor of half district of Jerusalem. Next to him, Jediah, son of Haramath, rebuilt the front of his house. Hattush, son of Hashbaniah, worked next to him. Malchijah, son of Haram, and Hashub, son of Pahath Moab, rebuilt another section that included the Tower of Furnaces. Working next to him was Shallum, son of Halohesh, mayor of the other half of Jerusalem, along with his daughters. The valley gate was rebuilt by Hanan and villagers of Zonoah. They repaired it, hung its doors, installed its bolts and bars. They went on to repair 1,500 feet of the wall as far as the dung gate. The dung gate itself was rebuilt by Malchijah, son of Rechab, the mayor of district of Beth Harachem. He repaired it, hung its doors, and installed its bolts and bars. The fountain gate was rebuilt by Shallun, son of Kolhosah, mayor of the Mizpah district. He repaired it, roofed it, hung its doors, and installed its bolts and bars. He also rebuilt the wall of the pool of Siloam at the king's garden as far as the steps that go down from the city of David. After him came Nehemiah, son of Azbuk, mayor of half district of Beth Zur. He worked from just in front of the tomb of David as far as the pool and the house of heroes. Levites under Rehum, son of Bani, were next in line. Alongside them, Hashbiah, mayor of half the district of Kaliah, representing his district in the rebuilding. Next to him, their brothers continued the rebuilding under Binu, son of Henadad, mayor of the other half district of Keilah. The section from in front of the ascent to the armory, as far as the angle, was rebuilt by Ezer, son of Jeshua, the mayor of Mizpath. From the angle to the door of the house of Eliashib the high priest was done by Berich, son of Zabbai. Memeroth, son of Uriah, the son of Hakaz, took it from the door of Elishib's house to the end of Elishib's house. Priests from the neighborhood went on from there. Benjamin and Hashub worked on the wall in front of their house, and Azariah, son of Maaseiah, the son of Ananiah, did the work alongside his house. The section from the house of Azariah to the angle at the corner was rebuilt by Benu, son of Henadad. Palal, son of Uzziah, worked opposite the angle and the tower that projects from the upper palace of the king near the court of the guard. Next to him, Pedaiah, son of Parosh, and the temple support staff who lived on the hill of Ophel worked up to the point opposite the water gate, eastward, and the projecting tower. The men of Tekoa did the section from the great projecting tower as far as the wall of Ophel. Above the horse gate, the priests worked, each priest repairing the wall in front of his own house. After them, Zadok, son of Immer, rebuilt in front of his house, and after him Shemaiah, son of Shechaniah, the keeper of the east gate. Then Hananiah, son of Shelemiah, and Hanan, the sixth son of Zaleth. Then Meshullam, son of Berechiah, rebuilt the wall in front of his storage shed. Malchijah, the goldsmith, repaired the wall as far as the house of the temple, support staff and merchants, up to the inspection gate, and the upper room at the corner. The goldsmiths and the merchants made the repairs between the upper room at the corner and the sheep gate. Nehemiah 4. I stationed armed guards. When Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, he exploded in anger, vilifying the Jews. In the company of Samaritan cronies and the military, he let loose. What are these miserable Jews doing? Do they think they can get everything back to normal overnight? Make building stones out of make-believe? At his side, Tobiah, the Ammonite, jumped in and said, "That's right. What do you think they're building? Why, if a fox climbed that wall, it would fall to pieces under his weight." Nehemiah prayed, "Oh, listen to us, dear God. We're so despised. Boomerang their ridicule on their heads. Have their enemies cart them off as war trophies to a land of no return. Don't forgive their iniquity. Don't wipe away their sin. They've insulted the builders." We kept at it, repairing and rebuilding the wall. The whole wall was soon joined together and halfway to its intended height because the people had a heart for the work. When Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the Ashdodites heard the repairs of the walls of Jerusalem were going so well that the breaks in the wall were being fixed, they were absolutely furious. They put their heads together and decided to fight against Jerusalem and create as much trouble as they could. We countered with prayer to our God and set a round-the-clock guard against them. But soon, word was going around in Judah. The builders are pooped. The rubbish piles up. We're in over our heads. We can't build this wall. And all this time our enemies were saying, "They won't know what hit them. Before they know it, we'll be at their throats, killing them right and left. That will put a stop to the work." The Jews who were their neighbors kept reporting, "They have us surrounded. They're going to attack. If we heard it once, we heard it 10 times. So I stationed armed guards at the most vulnerable places of the wall and assigned people by families with their swords, lances, and bows. After looking things over, I stood up and spoke to the nobles, officials, and everyone else. Don't be afraid of them. Put your minds on the Master, great and awesome, and then fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes. Our enemies learned that we knew all about their plan and that God had frustrated it, and we went back to the wall and went to work. From then on, half of my young men worked while the other half stood guard with lances, shields, bows, and mail armor. Military officers served as backup for everyone in Judah who was at work rebuilding the wall. The common laborers held a tool in one hand and a spear in the other. Each of the builders had a sword strapped to his side as he worked. I kept the trumpeter at my side to sound the alert. Then I spoke to the nobles and officials and everyone else. There's a lot of work going on, and we're spread out all along the wall, separated from each other. When you hear the trumpet call, join us there. Our God will fight for us. And so we kept working, from first light until the stars came out, half of us holding lances. I also instructed the people, each person and his helper is to stay inside Jerusalem, guards by night and workmen by day. We all slept in our clothes, I, my brothers, my workmen, and the guards backing me up, and each one kept a spear in his hand, even when getting water. Nehemiah 5. The Great Protest. A great protest was mounted by the people, including the wives, against their fellow Jews. Some said, "We have big families, and we need food just to survive." Others said, "We're having to mortgage our fields and vineyards and homes to get enough grain to keep from starving." And others said, "We're having to borrow money to pay the royal tax on our fields and vineyards. Look, we're the same flesh and blood as our brothers here. Our children are as good as theirs. Yet, here we are having to sell our children off as slaves. Some of our daughters have already been sold, and we can't do anything about it because our fields and vineyards are owned by somebody else." I got really angry when I heard their protests and complaints. After thinking it over, I called the nobles and officials on the carpet. I said, "Each one of you is gouging his brother." Then I called a big meeting to deal with them. I told them, "We did everything we could to buy back our Jewish brothers who had to sell themselves as slaves to foreigners. And now you're selling these same brothers back into debt slavery? Does that mean that we have to buy them back again?" They said nothing. What could they say? "What you're doing is wrong." Is there no fear of God left in you? Do you care what the nations around here, our enemies, think of you? I and my brothers and the people working for me also loan them money, but this gouging them with interest has to stop. Give them back their foreclosed fields, vineyards, olive groves, and homes right now, and forgive your claims on their money, grain, new wine, and olive oil." They said, "We'll give it all back. We won't make any more demands on them. We'll do everything you say." Then I called the priests together and made them promise to keep their word. Then I emptied my pockets, turning them inside out, and said, "So may God empty the pockets and house of everyone who doesn't keep this promise," turned inside out and emptied. Everyone gave a wholehearted "Yes, we'll do it," and praised God. And the people did what they promised. Remember in my favor, O God. From the time King Artaxerxes appointed me as their governor in the land of Judah, from the 20th to the 23rd year of his reign, 12 years, neither I nor my brother used the governor's food allowance. Governors who had preceded me had oppressed the people by taxing them 40 shekels of silver, about a pound, a day for food and wine, while their underlings bullied the people unmercifully. But out of fear of God, I did none of that. I had work to do. I worked on this wall. All my men were on the job to do the work. We didn't have time to line our own pockets. I fed 150 Jews and officials at my table, in addition to those who showed up from the surrounding nations. 1 ox, 6 choice sheep, and some chickens were prepared for me daily, and every 10 days a large supply of wine was delivered. Even so, I didn't use the food allowance provided for the governor. The people had it hard enough as it was. Remember in my favor, O God, everything I've done for these people. Recap. Day 269, Nehemiah 1 through 5. Nehemiah is an Israelite official who works as the king's personal assistant, giving him an inside track for getting the king's support. When we open today, he's got a family member in town from Jerusalem who says things aren't going well there. The exiles have been brought back for almost a century, but still haven't rebuilt the walls. He's distraught, and he mourns, fasts, and prays. He also quotes God back to God regarding the promises in Deuteronomy 30, 1 through 4. God has lived up to what he said he'd do, but the people haven't done what God asked, so Nehemiah wants to do something about it. When he asks for the king's approval, the king gives him everything he wants: time off work, a travel visa, and building supplies. He also sends military officers with him for the journey. Nehemiah acknowledges God's role in every level of this plan moving forward. God puts the idea in his heart, 2:12, and God granted him favor with the king when working out the plan. 2 verse 8. What God initiates, he will sustain, and he will fulfill. That's not to say it won't come with opposition. Nehemiah encounters that right away. Sanballat and Tobiah are governors of the areas surrounding Judah, and they're not pleased that everyone who works for Persia would help the people of Judah. Even though the king sent Nehemiah on this journey, they think it was a bad military decision. When Nehemiah gets to Jerusalem, he stays quiet about his plans, sneaking out at night to inspect the city's roads and walls before showing up as the new governor and presenting his plan to the locals. His pep talk is a hit, and all the people are on board, but when word gets back to Sanballat, Tobiah, and another governor, they falsely accuse him of rebelling against Persia. He isn't deterred. He says they'll keep working on what God started, trusting God will finish it. He reminds the neighboring governors that Jerusalem doesn't belong to them. It belongs to God and his people. Chapter 3 lists the projects and workers and even calls out a few nobles who think they're too good to help. In chapter 4, Sanballat and Tobiah make more threats, and Nehemiah asks God to turn their words back on them. The people continue building, no matter what their enemies say or do. Then, since the enemy can't discourage them, they attack them. Nehemiah asks God for help and sets up a guard for protection. But as word gets out to Jerusalem that their enemies want to kill them to stop their progress, their morale drops. They're in an especially vulnerable situation because they're rebuilding the very wall that would normally serve as a military defense, and they're barely halfway done, so the enemy has ample opportunity to invade. After the enemy sees God's working on their behalf, they back off. But the Jews aren't letting their guard down. They take off their construction vests and put on armor, and they pick up weapons and work with one hand on offense and one hand on defense. All this is happening during a famine, and because of the supply shortage, some locals have started enslaving other Jews. Nehemiah is furious. He commands the leaders to give back the land they've taken and stop charging interest, because those things go against God's law and heart. They promise to do what he says. Nehemiah does his part to solve the problem too. Even though governors have the right to take an income from the people, he doesn't, because he knows they've already been hard-pressed. Plus, he has the financial support of King Artaxerxes. For 12 years, the king pays Nehemiah's bills, and the money also blesses the locals. Today's God Shot. God works in a variety of ways, sometimes in the miraculous, sometimes in the mundane. Sometimes Israel didn't even have to lift a finger to win a battle. God just did it all on his own. But sometimes, like today, he works through his people. They're praying, working, and ready to defend his city. It's key to stay tuned in to God like Nehemiah does, always asking him for direction. He has a plan. We just have to ask what role we play in it. Sometimes he calls us to be active. Sometimes he calls us to wait for him to work. But he always has a plan. His plan is good. And he's where the joy is. And that concludes today's reading. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back reading the Bible again tomorrow, and I hope to see you there.